Welcome back to the Writer's Hive. This is a bi-weekly chat where we attempt to demystify the writing and publishing process. As always, I have Amber and Julie with me, and today we are taking a question from one of our viewers. But first of all, we would like to, moving forward, every few episodes or so, sort of catch you up on what we're doing behind the scenes so you can know as much as we know about our writing process and sort of follow us along. If you are at all interested in telling us what you're up to right now, be sure to leave a comment and let us know. If you just want to jump to the episode topic, I will have chapters in the description box below if you just want to skip ahead. But I figured we would start with Julie. And so what are you up to currently?
Well, currently I have just sent book 2 of my In-Ash series off to the publisher, so hopefully I will be getting those developmental edits back soon, and I am diving back into edits on my contemporary romance in the hopes of getting that all polished up and over to CP readers, and then hopefully requerying. I got some really amazing feedback when I queried it the first time and just didn't have time to implement it before querying again when I was working on A Curse in Ash and book 2. So now I have a little bit of downtime while the publisher has book 2 that I can rework that book and hopefully get that back out to query soon. So always have something in the pipeline. So just moving along.
Julie, I just wanted to ask, did you want to dive in at all about the revise and resubmit? Because I know that's a phrase that a lot of authors talk about, but people might not know how much amazing feedback you got and what the process is like with that.
Absolutely. So this was actually my first revise and resubmit, and I was really, really happy for it. They had the book, they had my contemporary romance for quite a while because it was during the beginning of the panorama, and it took a while for them to get back to me. And I was well, I was obviously disappointed that they didn't want the book, but they gave me amazing feedback. The things that worked in the story, the things that didn't work in the story, where they thought pacing could be a little bit tighter or certain storylines could be strengthened. And now they said, give it 6 months. You can't resubmit within 6 months, but if you do considerable edits on this, we would love to see it back again. And if you have any other stories, please let us know. We would love to see those as well. So I knew I had, a window of time to work with this before I could even resubmit. And that window hasn't actually come up yet. So I still have time to rework it. But it was my first true critique and any kind of advice. It wasn't like a rote, form rejection letter, which is what I had been getting in the past. So this was a really, really useful bit of information. And I was really pleased to get it once I got over the disappointment of not actually just being accepted as was. And I really have had a good time implementing it because it was very clear and very concise, what they thought specifically would strengthen the story. So I've been able to go back in and edit for those particular things and really make my book a much better book. I'm really excited to requery it. I will resubmit to them directly, but I think I might actually requery it around a little bit to other places as well too, and just see where it goes. But it's definitely a new part of the writing and publishing process for me. I haven't been in this particular position. I've done my own self-edits as I queried and got rejections. I'm like, oh, maybe I can strengthen this or that. But this is my first time actually implementing feedback from querying specifically, as opposed to part of the publishing editing process. So it's been interesting. I've got high hopes for this book. So hopefully it goes smoothly once these edits are done.
I'm in a weird place with writing. I'm just kind of in the process of trying to figure out what project I want to work on because I haven't felt excited about a project in a while. So I'm just kind of brainstorming and trying to decide what genre I want to go into and what project I want to work on. I have a lot of ideas and a lot of stuff that I've started, and I don't know if I want to go back to one of those or try to find something new. So I'm just kind of in a brainstorming phase right now.
Sometimes that's what we need, is a brainstorming phase. I burnt out significantly last year, the end of last year, so I am not currently working on any drafting or anything like that. I am releasing an audiobook for Take Back Your Book, an author's guide on rights reversion and publishing on your terms. So I just got the audio files back from my narrator, and it's such a different process going through this. Previously, my audiobooks with my traditional publisher, I had nothing to do with it. It was very much a courtesy to be like, hey, here's your narrator. We're going to take care of the rest. So I had the pleasure of choosing my own narrator and sort of going through the process. So it's a lot of fun. It's quite tedious to go through an audiobook. I tend to be an audiobook listener on like 2 times speed. So I have to listen to this audiobook, the normal speed, and then sort of pick out inconsistencies or mispronunciations or miswords or things like that. So that's been very interesting. It's definitely a new process for me. And I'm really enjoying it. And I love working with this narrator. I will link her in the description box if you want to check her out. It's Jillian Yetter. She is phenomenal. And also, I have just received notes back from my editor for my adult thriller that I'm hoping to publish this year. As I said, I was burnt out. I took the month of January sort of off, and I'm sort of getting back into fiction writing now. So I think that's the perfect project to move forward on. Mostly because I have copy edit deadlines to meet in May. So that's sort of where I am with that. And I'm also working on a secret project that I have not released yet to anyone. I have been vlogging it though, so I'm excited to hopefully some point release that to everyone else. So that's it for our updates right now. I'm going to jump into the topic of this episode, and it was a comment back in June 2021 from a Blue Oval Gal. They want to know, could you one day make a video addressing using your own name or a pen name for your books, and the pros and cons? So we thought this was a great episode topic, and thank you so much for commenting and giving us this topic to discuss today. As always, if there's another topic you want us to discuss in the future, be sure to leave a comment below. Amber, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I think I've struggled a lot trying to decide if I wanted to use my real name or a pen name. More recently, growing up, when I dreamed about being a writer as a teenager and as a young 20s, I always had this idea of a pen name, which was really technically my name. It was my first name and middle name as my last name. And I self-published under that quickly before thinking about it. They were mostly first drafts. I didn't know anything about it. It was self-publishing was very new and just starting to kind of get popular. And at this point now that I am wanting to move to the more traditional route, that name is kind of taken because I published those other works under there, and they'll never disappear. They'll never go away. And it would make it impossible to become like a debut under that name. And I could kick myself for that, for taking that name, because I always dreamed about writing under that name. But I have no problems writing under my real name. It's fine to me. Like I like my name. It's not like anything crazy. So I would write under my name in a traditional sense. But if I was to write under, but I've always wanted to write adult books. If I was to write a middle grade, young adult, or even something more in like the erotic sphere, I would definitely use a pen name to differentiate myself from just my main genre. But I am a little sad that my pen name is gone now because of me being young and stupid. But oh well.
Yeah, I self-published under my name, just Julie Xantopoulos, when I did my flash fiction and poetry collection. And then obviously A Curse and Ash is under my name as well. And I do think that I will probably publish underneath a pen name when I do, hopefully, a more traditional route for my contemporary romance novels, just because Xantopoulos is a mouthful. It's probably not the easiest name in the world, although people have been amazing with different unplugged unboxings or hauls, or they've been saying my name fantastically, which gives me faith, but I will probably go with something a little bit more market friendly. So while I love my name, I will probably be using a pen name if I traditionally publish for my adult romance, contemporary romance. I also had a stint a while back where I was using pen names or a pen name to write erotica. And that's just not because I'm embarrassed of writing erotica, but mostly because I work with children. I've always been in fields where I work with young kids, or, I just didn't need my name associated with that, just in case there was any misconceptions or prejudices about that type of writing. And then women working with kids. I mean, I think we're all very aware of the prejudices that exist in the world, and any woman who dares to enjoy herself. So I think that there's a lot of merit to pen names. I think that if you're writing across genres, it's helpful to kind of split that up by pen name. I think if you're writing across different age groups, it can also be very helpful to distinguish your writings via pen name. There are so many authors, traditionally and otherwise, that use pen names to distinguish between their genre writing, their age writing. And it really just gives readers a better expectation of what to expect when you are reading from that particular pen name or, identity of a writer. Not to say that one is, more valid than the other, etc. It's just going to be a way to identify the type of book you're going to get from that name. And it really does help avoid any kind of reader, disappointment or bad reviews, things like that. When you're like, this is not what I came here for. I thought I was going to be getting this, or I'm used to reading them as a middle grade author, pick this book up because I thought it was going to be middle grade. It's not, it's adult. You split that up under different pen names, and you really are kind of helping your readers find exactly what they want from you underneath different names. So I think that they can be very valuable. As somebody who is newly in an author sphere in terms of career and monetization, there's a lot of different nuance to pen name using. I think a lot of different platforms make it pretty easy to streamline payments and things like that. And then in terms of legalities and taxes and et cetera, there's probably a little bit more that I would need to look into going down the road. And that might be something that Caitlin might be able to speak to, but it's relatively easy to set up a pen name. It's not really anything that's too difficult. And I think really benefits an author, again, when it comes to reader expectations and just kind of dividing up your works if you want to be somebody who writes across different genres or two different markets. So I anticipate using them in the future. I don't think there's going to be a time in my writing career where I'm only writing under one name, and no one name or pen name is going to be more important or more valuable to me than another. And it's really just going to be a division based on helping my readers find the kind of content that they want from me. Once they know that they like a certain pen name or names writing, they can stick with that. And then make their decisions if they decide to jump over to another name. But I think it's really just more for that, making sure that my readers are getting what they want from me by making it a little bit more clear via pen name. So yeah, I think that I don't see as many downfalls to them as I do benefits. So I would say if you're thinking about one, then you're probably doing it for the right reasons. And I would say go for it.
Yeah, there's many pros and cons of using a pen name, and it just depends. I think a lot of it for me has been how much work I want to do. So backstory, all of my books under HQ Digital were under my name. I wrote YA paranormal. I wrote upper YA romance. I wrote women's fiction. I wrote contemporary fantasy. And I found that eventually that didn't work very well in terms of favoring me for algorithms or really finding my readership. And that's something I still struggle with now. I feel like I'm sort of starting over now that I'm self-publishing in terms of finding my core readership. So I thought about this after I got the rights back to my young adult paranormal series. I no longer wanted to have these books under my Caitlin Duncan name because my more successful women's fiction books didn't really translate to young adult paranormal. So I took that as an opportunity I probably should have done years ago, but there's always times to course correct. So when it came to choosing a pen name, I decided to keep the last name the same so that if there was any crossover, then, you know, if people read widely, then they could always find my books. But most of the time, people use it for to be anonymous. And I don't really, it's not, these books aren't anything that like I want to keep a secret from anyone. But that is a valid reason to use a pen name if you are, as Julie said, if you're writing something that you don't feel like will make you employable, or say you're a doctor and you know you don't want your patients to know you wrote a book, or anything like that. So I'm choosing not to be anonymous with it, but you definitely can. That's a very valid way to do it. I'm just using it now to sort of separate genres and sort of show my readers where to go if they enjoy one or the other when it comes to my name. So that was the considerations that I made. And like Julie said, I think if you're thinking about using a pen name, that's definitely you know, you're starting off in the right spot with it. And just in terms of like algorithms as well, I know that I think it's been said in the past, I think David Gaughran has said it in the past about his fiction and his nonfiction sort of mixing up a little bit in the Amazon also bots. That may not always be a thing, and you always have your audiences, sort of the ones who ride or die for you. You know, they'll follow you wherever you go, but it's definitely something to think about now when it comes to a lot of algorithms, which is sort of what runs our lives. So if you are thinking about doing that, I think it's important. Some of the cons about pen names really depends on where you want to take it. For instance, for Caitlin Duncan and Katie Duncan, I chose to have two separate Instagram accounts. You could take this to another level where you have separate websites, like totally separate newsletters, things like that. And I think it's very time consuming to do that. If you want to do it, or if you have an assistant or anything like that, you know, more power to you. That's probably the best route, is to completely separate yourself. But as authors, most of us are just one people shows for most of the time, so it's a little more difficult. So that's a consideration to make. It can be a pro or a con, but it just really depends on how far you want to take it with the separation.
Yeah, I know the cons can be, you know, that it could be hard with payment. It could be hard with marketing when it's this other name, and it does bring a little bit of a issue. But I think that the pros outweigh the cons so much, because even when it's not a secret, when it's just that it's a different genre. For example, Shauna McGuire writes a lot of like YA and very fantastical work under her name, but then she has Myra Grant, which she writes a lot of like very scientific thrillers and horror and things like that. And it's a totally different name than her name, but it's very, like, she puts it on her Twitter, she puts both names, like it's very known that that's who it is. But it's helpful to me as a reader, loving her scientific thrillers and her scientific horror. When I see that Myra Grant is publishing a new book, I know what to expect from those books. And whereas with Shauna McGuire, I know that it's going to be a little bit more magical, a little bit, you know, more like young reading, because a lot of it's YA, even though it's still great and I still love it. It is good to know. And if you have somebody that doesn't like YA, or somebody that doesn't like adult, they don't have to worry whenever they go to buy the new book from their favorite author that it's not what they want to read. And I think that the biggest pros is when you do write a genre, like two different genres that are so vastly different from each other. Whereas like in Julie's case with an adult fantasy, and then with contemporary romance, those are so vastly different. They're both adult, but they're vastly different. And a lot of people that enjoy reading one can enjoy reading the other, but some people don't. Some people don't like fantasy. Some people don't like contemporary romance. So I think that, you know, if you wanted to put everything under the same name, under your name, that's fine. But a lot of times, especially with traditional publishing, you're going to have to write under the same genre until you establish yourself enough to be able to branch out. And having a pen name could alleviate that, because you could have 2 separate debuts, 2 separate websites, like Kate said, everything. So I think that there's a lot of pros in choosing a pen name, and just having it, even Stephen King in the beginning had a pen name for some of his other works, which they ended up being rebranded under Stephen King just because he became so prolific. But I don't see many cons in I think it's a great thing to have a pen name.
I wanted to talk about another pro because you sort of brought that up too, especially with traditional publishing, but it can be for self-publishing too. If, you put out books or a series of books and they don't necessarily do well. I know a lot of traditionally published authors are usually given the advice to republish as a debut author under a different pen name. I believe Riley Sager did this, and it's very well known. He doesn't really try to hide it. I think the name Riley Sager was to make it sound a little more feminine, because a lot of women are writing in the domestic thriller genre. But he had written books prior to that. And from what I've read, don't quote me on this, but supposedly they didn't do as well as his other books. So he came out as a new author when it was just really him. So that's definitely an option too. Like if you say, for instance, Amber, you talked about that, if you probably will write under a pen name in the future because like you felt like, those weren't your best works and now they're out there forever. So it's definitely a pro. You can use it as a pro in terms of that regard. So you could always just start over new, start over fresh when you feel like you want to. So that is our discussion all about pen names and the pros and cons of using them. So if you would like to continue this conversation about pen names, we would love to. So be sure to leave a comment below, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye. Points to hit about pen names. Did your light just turn off, Julie?
My neck is feeling very stiff, so I had to roll it, but I rolled it too aggressively.
Well, you rolled it. You rolled it so hard that it turned the light off.